They don't want you to know this, but your body was designed for instant self-healing. And this secret has always been hidden in plain sight. From the moment you were born, you were told that healing must come from the outside, from pills, treatments, or medical devices. You were taught to wait, to numb the pain, to override your body's quiet signals with louder commands. But deep within the ancient traditions passed from hand to hand in silence, there is something else. A single, barely known touch that changes everything. This is not a metaphor or a belief. It is a gesture that awakens a real physiological shift in your nervous system, rooted not in effort, but in presence. This is the forgotten practice once guarded by Egyptian initiates, taught in whispers, encoded in temples, and nearly erased by time. But it is still here, still alive. And once you learn it, nothing in your body or your life will feel the same again. We've been led to believe that the body is just a structure, meat, bones, and systems all wrapped in skin and waiting for a malfunction, a mechanism to be diagnosed, treated, and repaired. You grow up hearing about organs and charts, calories and symptoms, all reduced to data points. The body becomes something to manage, not something to inhabit. But before hospitals and health apps, before modern medicine gave you numbers to chase and pills to swallow, the body was seen as something else entirely. It was sacred. It was conscious. It was a temple, not in a poetic sense, but as a literal truth. The oldest civilizations understood this. In Egypt, India, Tibet, and the sacred forests of the Americas, the body was never seen as a problem to be solved, but as a field to be tuned. Every breath, every pulse, every point on the skin held vibrational meaning. The body was not the end of awareness. It was the bridge, the interface between the material and the invisible, a place where healing came not from adding something new, but from remembering what was already there. And that memory is still in you. It is not lost. It has just been drowned out, buried under routine, stress, and all the external noise telling you that you are broken. You have been trained to listen outward before you listen inward. But the truth is this: your body never stopped speaking. You just forgot how to hear it. What we call symptoms are often signals. What we call tension is often protection. What we call pain is often a call, an invitation to return. And there is a place in your body, a small and almost forgotten zone that has been waiting for your attention. Behind the ear, along the curve of the skull, near the soft bone where the skin thins and the breath slows. The ancients knew this point not as a random collection of nerves and tissue, but as a vibrational portal, a bioenergetic seal. And when it is touched with presence, not pressure, it begins to whisper something to your nervous system. It tells it, you can rest now. You are safe. There are some aspects of this gesture that cannot be fully shared in an open forum. Its full depth, the teachings behind it, the layers of resonance it activates, are too delicate for simple explanations. Their essence is revealed through personal experience and deep inner attention. Because this is not just a practice, it is a remembrance, a reconnection with the part of you that has always known how to heal. You don't need to override your biology. You need to tune into it. And this tuning doesn't require years of training or complex tools. It begins with presence, with the breath, and with a touch so simple it feels like a whisper through the skin. Modern science is catching up to what ancient initiates already knew. Your nervous system is not just a switchboard of signals. It is an emotional field, a frequency reader, a memory keeper. And when you activate the right point with the right intention, it responds, not mechanically but intelligently. It softens. It lets go and begins to reorganize itself, moving from survival to restoration. The body is not a machine waiting to break. It is a living instrument. And like a harp, it doesn't need to be forced into harmony. It just needs the right vibration, the right contact, the right listener. It's easy to overlook something so small, a place you pass your hand over 100 times without a thought. But just behind your ear, near the base of the skull, lies a point that holds more than anatomy. It holds memory. Not the kind of memory stored in your mind, but something deeper. A memory encoded in vibration, in presence, in the skin itself. This is not a metaphor. This point exists, and when activated with intention, not pressure, not force, it begins a cascade within your system that modern language cannot fully describe, but which ancient initiates once guarded with reverence. This subtle point near the mastoid bone is not random. It is located along the path of the vagus nerve, the longest and most influential nerve in your body. The vagus nerve touches your heart, lungs, gut, even your voice. It decides whether you remain locked in survival mode or move into the natural rhythm of restoration. It holds the power to signal every cell. It's safe now. You can begin to heal. Modern medicine understands the vagus nerve, but only clinically. It knows the circuits, but not the silence. It studies the nerve, but not the message. In ancient Egypt, this point wasn't just biological, it was spiritual. It was called a vibrational seal, a gateway to inner balance. And when touched with awareness, the body responded not as a machine, but as a temple, remembering how to light its own flame again. Imagine a moment of complete stillness. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of silence. A silence that breathes, that moves, that opens a door you didn't know was there. That is what this gesture does. 2 fingers, a soft exhale, a presence that says, I am here. I am listening. And just like that, the nervous system begins to respond, not with effort, but with surrender. Because this point, when activated correctly, is not about fixing something. It is about allowing something. Allowing the body to do what it was always designed to do. In the mystery schools of Kemet, this spot was used not only for healing, but for transition. Before ceremonies, before initiations, before the soul was invited to walk deeper into the unseen. This gesture was performed in silence, always in silence, because words can distort. But touch, when aligned with intention, speaks a different language. A language the nervous system understands intuitively. A language of safety, of return. This was not a practice for the masses. It was passed down to those who were ready. Not because it was complicated, but because it was powerful, and power in untrained hands becomes force. That is why this touch was taught slowly, only after the student had learned to be present, to breathe, to still their mind enough for the body to trust them again. You don't need credentials to remember this. You don't need to be a healer. You are the field. You are the temple. All you need is presence and the willingness to listen, not with your ears, but with your hands, your breath, your stillness. Behind the ear lies the edge of 2 worlds, the physical and the subtle. And when the veil is thin enough, when the contact is true, healing doesn't have to be summoned. It arrives. Your nervous system is not waiting for more stimulation. It is waiting for recognition. This seal is not just a place. It is a message, a signal that the body has permission to stop protecting and start reorganizing. And it all begins with a touch. Not just any touch, but one infused with the most ancient frequency of all, awareness. Touch is the first sense we develop. Before we understand words, before we can even open our eyes, we understand touch. It's how we learn that we are safe, that we exist, that we belong in a body. But somewhere along the way, we forgot that touch is not just physical, it's vibrational. And that when given with presence, even the gentlest contact can reshape the entire nervous system. This is what the ancient traditions always knew. That healing doesn't start with tools, diagnoses, or treatments. It starts with attention, with how you show up, not just with what you do. This practice we are exploring, this subtle activation behind the ear, only works because of the consciousness you bring to it. If you approach it with force, if you try to make something happen, it doesn't work. In fact, it backfires. The body is intelligent. It can feel the difference between being fixed and being seen, between being manipulated and being met. The real medicine is not the technique. It's the presence behind the touch. That's why this gesture is so powerful, because it bypasses the thinking mind. It doesn't say, do this to get that. It says, be here fully and let the body remember the rest. Throughout time and across cultures, the most gifted healers were not those with the most complex tools. They were those who had mastered the art of presence. The shamans, monks, yogis, and mystics all understood the same thing: that the body responds to energy, to frequency, to the quality of attention far more than to pressure. A healer could place their hand on a wound and do nothing physically. Yet the person would begin to weep, to release, to soften. Why? Because for the first time the body felt met, not managed, seen, not fixed. We live in a world addicted to doing. The assumption is that more action, more intervention, more control equals better outcomes, but healing doesn't come from control, it comes from coherence. And coherence starts with stillness, not stimulation. Think about it. When did you last feel truly safe in someone's presence? Not because they said the right thing or had a solution, but simply because they were fully there with you. No agenda, no rush, just presence. This is the essence of this technique. It is not a trick. It is a return. A return to the sacred simplicity of human touch, guided by deep listening. The spot behind the ear is just a doorway, but what it opens depends on the energy you bring. If you rush it, if you think of it as a tool to hack your system, it shuts. But if you approach it like an offering, like a sacred act, soft fingers, steady breath, quiet heart, the body will open. Not because you made it, but because it finally feels safe enough to let go. This is why the ancients taught this not as a method, but as a way of being. It wasn't about mastering a trick. It was about transforming the self into a vessel of healing. You don't manipulate the body into harmony. You hold space for it to return there on its own. The touch becomes a mirror, reflecting back to the system what it's forgotten. That safety is possible, that it's okay to come home. In our culture, we associate healing with doing something dramatic, something complex or externally visible. But some of the most powerful healing doesn't look like anything at all. It is silent. It is invisible. A breath, a touch, a stillness that ripples through every cell, reminding the body of a song it used to know. The touch behind the ear becomes a tuning fork, not forcing the system, but inviting it to return to resonance. There is nothing mystical about this when you experience it. It feels deeply natural, like something ancient waking up inside you. And maybe that's the point. Maybe healing isn't something new you need to learn. Maybe it's something you already carry, waiting for the right presence to activate it. That presence begins with you, with the way you breathe, the way you notice, the way you touch. Not with your fingers, but with your attention. Your body is not just flesh and organs, it is memory. It holds every unspoken fear, every suppressed emotion, every moment you were told to stay quiet, to stay small, to stay in line. These experiences do not vanish. They imprint. They settle into the nervous system like echoes. And over time, they create a pattern, a constant background hum of defense. Most people don't realize how much tension they carry. Not because of injury, but because of protection. The body has been bracing for years, bracing for rejection, for disappointment, for danger that may never come but still feels close. This is why healing is not about fixing what's broken. It's about reminding the body that it's safe, that the war is over, that it can exhale. And nothing speaks this language more fluently than the nervous system. You see, your nervous system isn't just managing your body, it's narrating your entire reality. When it feels safe, the world opens up. You breathe deeper, think clearer, and connect more fully. But when it senses a threat, everything contracts. Breath shallows, muscles tighten, thoughts spiral. This doesn't happen because you're weak. It happens because you're human. And that tiny space behind the ear, that subtle spot near the base of the skull, is one of the nervous system's most powerful access points. It's not magic, it's design. It's where the vagus nerve, your body's built-in healing switch, runs closest to the surface. Touching it with intention sends a message directly to the control center. You are not in danger anymore. You can soften. You can rebuild. But here's the part they never told you. Healing begins when the soul returns. And the soul does not live in tension. It does not thrive in fear. It will not fully come forward when the body is on high alert. This is why so many people feel like they are only half alive. Their creativity feels blocked. Their intuition is muffled. Their sense of joy and connection is dimmed. It's not that they've lost it. It's that the soul has pulled back, waiting for a signal that it's safe to re-enter. And that signal often starts with something as small as a conscious touch. One moment of real presence, one gesture that tells the entire system, you are safe. When you apply this touch nightly, especially before sleep, it becomes more than a technique. It becomes a ritual, and rituals carry power. Not because they are complicated, but because they create consistency. They rewire patterns. The body begins to associate that gesture with calm, with rest, with return. Over time, the gesture becomes a key. The body knows what it means. The soul knows what it means. And each time you repeat it, something in you relaxes a little more. Not because you are doing something to yourself, but because you are allowing something deeper to rise to the surface. Think about how often we override this system. We drink more caffeine when we're tired. We scroll when we're overwhelmed. We numb discomfort instead of listening to it. We have been trained to push through, to ignore, to suppress. But the nervous system was never designed to be bullied into silence. It was meant to be listened to be partnered with. And when we do, when we offer even one moment of conscious safety, it begins to whisper back. This is what the ancient initiates meant when they spoke of recalibration through stillness. They weren't referring to meditation as an escape. They meant the moment when the body stops defending and starts remembering. When the layers of armor soften and the soul begins to step forward, not because you called it, but because the body finally became a safe place to land. You don't need to force healing. You just need to create the conditions in which healing becomes inevitable. That is what this point behind the ear represents. It is not just anatomy, it is an invitation for the nervous system to shift, for the soul to return, for the body to come back into harmony with its own rhythm. And when that happens, what unfolds is not just health. It's a quiet kind of liberation. Not loud, not flashy, just the simple, profound return to the truth. You were never broken, only braced. Your body is not just a machine of muscles and bones. It is an instrument, and like any instrument, it can fall out of tune, not from a lack of function, but from dissonance. The stress, the noise, the unprocessed emotions, and the constant demands of modern life distort your natural rhythm. They create tension in the nervous system, tightness in the fascia, fog in the mind. But beneath all of that, there is still a note playing, a deep, eternal hum that remembers what wholeness feels like. The question is not whether healing is possible. The question is, can you remember the original frequency? This is where the practice of conscious touch becomes something far more than therapeutic. It becomes musical. Just as tuning a stringed instrument doesn't require replacement, just adjustment, this practice doesn't fix the body, it reminds it. When your fingers meet that point behind the ear with genuine presence, the signal sent is vibrational, not mechanical. And the body, like a master musician returning to an old song, remembers how to tune itself. Modern science is beginning to catch up slowly. Research on vibrational therapies, sound healing, and vagus nerve stimulation all point to what mystics and healers knew for millennia, that the body responds to frequency before it responds to force. That's why this practice is not about how hard you press or how long you hold. It's about the quality of the vibration you're transmitting. And that vibration is determined by your state of being. If you're rushed, anxious, or distracted, the gesture loses its tone. But when you arrive with presence, the frequency shifts, the signal becomes clear, and the body listens. This is also why repetition matters. Not for results, but for rhythm. The more consistently you perform this touch with reverence, the more the body entrains to that frequency. Over time, the act becomes familiar, predictable, and in that predictability, the nervous system finds safety. Just as a song repeated enough times becomes lodged in your memory, this nightly ritual imprints a healing pattern into your physiology. Eventually, the mere act of preparing for the gesture, slowing the breath, softening the gaze, becoming still, signals to your system that healing is already underway. Healing in this way becomes less of a pursuit and more of a return. You are not learning something new. You are remembering what was always there. The body doesn't need to be taught how to heal. It just needs to be reminded that it can. And that reminder comes not from medication or logic, but from frequency, from coherence, from that soft, intentional contact behind the ear that says without words, "You are home." You don't have to force the process. The touch is enough. Done gently and consistently, it becomes a bridge not just between the body and mind, but between this world and the deeper intelligence that animates it. The ancients did not view healing as a fix. They viewed it as an attunement, a way to reharmonize with the natural order. And this spot, this single access point, was one of their sacred tuning forks. Because when touched with presence, it didn't just calm the body, it opened the gates of remembrance. This is what healing truly is, remembering the melody of wholeness. You don't need to analyze it or even understand it. You just need to feel it and let that frequency become your default state. Not something you visit, but something you live from. This practice is how you begin. One touch, one breath, total presence. Every night there is a moment just before sleep takes you when the mind softens and the walls between dimensions thin. The ancients called this the liquid hour, a sacred threshold between waking and dreaming, between the conscious and the unconscious. It's a moment most people race through, scrolling their phones or chasing distraction, unaware of the doorway they're passing by. But for initiates in the mystery schools of Egypt, this hour was everything. It was the gateway to deeper realms, a sacred time for healing, for communion, for revelation. And it is in this hour that the single touch behind the ear reveals its most subtle and powerful potential. You see, sleep is not just rest, it's restoration. And the bridge between the waking mind and the dreamscape is where the body's deepest repairs occur. But modern life has hijacked this passage. Artificial light, mental overstimulation, and unresolved stress keep the nervous system on high alert even as the body tries to surrender. That's why so many people wake up exhausted. Not because they didn't sleep long enough, but because their systems never truly let go. Healing doesn't begin with hours of sleep. It begins with the quality of your descent into it. This is where the ancient touch becomes a ritual, not just a tool performed right before sleep. It acts as a signal flare to the subconscious. It's safe to let go. It's safe to drift. The nervous system, activated all day by stress and vigilance, finally receives a message it rarely hears. You can soften now. You can descend. And that descent, when done with awareness, does more than regenerate the body. It opens the inner gates of intuition. It tunes the dreamscape for insight. It invites the soul to return with messages, with memories, with fragments of truth the waking mind could never access on its own. Practiced consistently, this nightly touch becomes more than physical. It becomes a ceremony, a moment of quiet reverence where you realign not just your biology but your being. And the power is not in the touch itself, it's in the intention behind it. When your fingers rest at that sacred point with full presence, you are not manipulating tissue. You are opening a channel, a portal, and through it the vibrational field reorganizes not by force but by invitation. The Egyptians knew this. Their rituals were not complicated. They were precise, deliberate. They understood that the subtlest actions often carried the greatest energetic weight, especially when timed with cosmic rhythms. To touch this point at the liquid hour, in the stillness between day and dream, is to speak directly to the nervous system in its most receptive state. It is when resistance is lowest, when programming can be rewritten, when healing is not just physical but vibrational. Over time, this ritual becomes an anchor. No matter how chaotic your day, no matter how scattered your mind, this moment becomes your return point, a space where everything slows, where the noise recedes and the original frequency begins to rise again from beneath the surface static. The gesture becomes sacred not because it's grand, but because it's consistent. And in a world that teaches us to search outward for everything, it's radical to create a nightly practice that asks for nothing but presence. The benefits compound. You begin to notice your dreams shift. They become clearer, more symbolic, sometimes prophetic. You feel more grounded when you wake, as though something beyond words took place while you slept. The body feels less guarded, the mind less frantic. Creativity returns. The soul begins to speak, not in ideas, but in sensations. You are not just sleeping. You are recalibrating, reintegrating. This nightly moment is not a hack. It is a remembering, a return to what the ancients always knew, that healing and guidance don't arrive when you chase them. They arrive when you make space, when you signal to the deepest parts of yourself that you're ready to listen. And in the stillness of that sacred threshold, with just 2 fingers and 1 breath, you whisper to the universe, "I'm ready." For most people, the body is not a home. It is a battleground, a place of silent tension, suppressed emotion, and accumulated stress. Over time, this tension becomes normal. You don't notice the tightness in your shoulders or the way your jaw clenches at night. You don't question the restlessness in your gut or the exhaustion that follows you even after a full night's sleep. But beneath it all, the truth remains. The body is holding the story of disconnection. And it is disconnection that drives illness, burnout, and that aching sense that something is missing. The ancients didn't see illness the way we do. They didn't treat it as a problem to fix, but as a message to decode. They believed that when the soul retreats, when safety disappears, the body begins to malfunction. Not out of failure, but out of self-preservation. Chronic stress, trauma, and fear all tell the nervous system the same thing. It is not safe, and when the body doesn't feel safe, the soul begins to pull back. Vital energy retreats, creativity dries up, emotions become muted, and healing stalls. This is why the simplest gesture done with reverence and presence can be so powerful. Because healing begins the moment safety is reintroduced. The gentle touch behind the ear, when performed consciously, is not just physical. It is a safety signal, a message to the nervous system saying, "You can let go now." And when the body believes it, something extraordinary happens. The soul begins to return. It doesn't return with fanfare or drama. It slips in quietly like a breeze through an open window. You begin to feel a little more alive, a little more attuned, a little more present in your own skin. Colors seem brighter. Sounds feel deeper. You laugh more easily. You notice beauty in ordinary things. These are the signs that the soul is coming home. Not because you forced it, but because you created the conditions for its return. Most people don't realize how much of their life is lived in partial presence. Their bodies go through the motions while their essence remains distant. That distance is not laziness or a lack of effort. It is self-protection. When the world teaches you to suppress, conform, and survive, the soul learns to hide. But the body remembers. It remembers what safety feels like, what stillness feels like, what wholeness feels like. And when you reintroduce those feelings through intentional touch, the whole system begins to reorganize. This is why this practice goes beyond wellness trends and biohacking tips. It reaches into something deeper, something sacred. Because when the soul returns, everything changes, not just your mood or your energy, but your sense of meaning. Decisions become clearer. Relationships deepen. Life doesn't feel like a maze of tasks. It feels like a conversation with something greater. And the body, once a place of pain or numbness, becomes a temple again, a place you actually want to live in. And it's not just the soul that returns. When the nervous system feels safe, the body's regenerative capacities switch back on. Digestion improves, inflammation decreases, sleep deepens. Even your immune response becomes stronger. This is what modern science is only beginning to understand, that the foundation of health is not effort, it's safety. And safety doesn't come from pills or procedures. It comes from frequency, from vibration, from presence. That is why this gesture matters. Not because it's magical, but because it's precise. It meets the nervous system at its root. It bypasses logic and speaks in the body's native language. Touch, vibration, stillness. And in that language, the message is clear. You are not in danger. You don't need to brace anymore. You can rest. You can feel. You can return. In a world that constantly tells you to do more, push harder, and numb faster, it is revolutionary to pause, place your fingers on a sacred point, and say with your presence, enough. I choose safety. I choose stillness. I choose to remember. And in that remembrance, healing becomes not a goal, but a natural consequence. You are no longer chasing wholeness. You are embodying it. In every day, there is a doorway that most people walk past without even noticing. It is that quiet space between waking and sleep, the liquid hour. The ancients knew it well. They spoke of this threshold not as an end to the day, but as a sacred crossing, a moment when the veil between the conscious mind and the deeper soul begins to dissolve. In this window, the body lets go, the mind softens, and the spirit listens. It is here, in this subtle terrain, that the gesture becomes more than a healing technique. It becomes a ritual, a nightly remembrance of what it means to be whole. Think of your typical evening. Screens flashing, the mind racing, thoughts looping from one worry to another. Even as your head hits the pillow, your body remains on edge. The nervous system doesn't respond to the clock, it responds to energy. And when your energy is scattered, sleep becomes shallow, restless, and unfulfilling. This is not rest. It is sedation. And yet, with a small shift, just 2 fingers placed behind the ear with intention, the entire terrain changes. The body begins to downshift. The breath slows. And the liquid hour becomes a sacred bath for your nervous system. This is how the ancients entered dream states. Not through escape, but through attunement. They used this practice not just for healing, but for guidance. By touching that sacred point with consciousness, they weren't just activating the vagus nerve, they were activating intuition, insight, connection. Because at this threshold, the veil thins, and what is usually buried deep beneath the noise of waking life begins to surface. Your dreams become clearer. Your sleep becomes more regenerative. And sometimes messages arrive, not in words, but in symbols, feelings and subtle impressions that shape your choices the next day. Modern science explains this through neurophysiology. Activating the vagus nerve before bed has been shown to reduce cortisol, improve heart rate variability, and increase parasympathetic activity, the biological markers of deep rest and recovery. But the mystics explained it differently. They said this ritual resets your vibrational field, that when the body is still and the mind is clear, your soul can reorganize itself overnight. That sleep, when entered consciously, is not just for recovery, it's for revelation. And this isn't about doing it perfectly. Some nights your thoughts may still race. Some nights you'll forget the practice altogether. But the body remembers, the soul remembers, and over time a pattern sets in. The moment your fingers touch that point behind the ear, your system begins to shift. The gesture becomes a signal not just to rest, but to awaken something deeper within you. Not a part of you that needs fixing, but the part of you that was never broken. This is the paradox. True healing doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from surrendering deeper. The liquid hour invites you to release the effort, to stop striving, and to trust the intelligence already flowing within you. You are not broken. You are not lost. You have simply been living too far from your own center. And this ritual, this nightly moment of presence, brings you back. Each night as you prepare for sleep, you are given a choice. Will you collapse into unconsciousness, or will you cross the threshold with intention? Will you carry the static of the world into your dreams, or will you enter the stillness that reveals the truth beneath the noise? This touch, this gesture is the key. Not because it changes the world outside you, but because it changes your relationship to it. It tells your body you are safe. It tells your soul you are welcome here. And in that moment, the divide between body, mind, and spirit begins to dissolve. If you are not already practicing this, you are leaving one of the most powerful moments of your day untouched. A doorway into clarity, insight, and restoration sits right before you every night. All it asks is presence. And for those who walk through it with intention, the rewards are beyond what most will ever imagine. The deepest secret of all is this: healing was never something you had to find. It was never a destination, a future moment, or a missing piece. Healing is a frequency, and that frequency has always been within you. The ancient initiates viewed it not as something to achieve, but as something to remember. And now, so do you. This single touch, this vibrational gesture, is not a technique. It is a mirror showing you the truth of who you already are, whole, sovereign, and profoundly intelligent in your design. When you practice this touch consistently, with presence, reverence, and trust, you don't just soothe your nervous system. You recondition your entire reality. You rewire your patterns. You release the internalized lie that your body is fragile, broken, or separate from spirit. And over time, something extraordinary happens. Your baseline shifts. You stop chasing healing. You begin living from it. Every moment becomes an extension of that frequency. Your words soften. Your reactions slow. Your thoughts realign. And instead of reacting to the chaos around you, you start emanating coherence from within. That coherence is contagious. You will notice people feel calmer around you, even if they don't understand why. You will begin attracting experiences, connections, and ideas that feel synchronistic, not because the universe changed, but because your resonance did. That is the gift of this practice. It doesn't just transform your biology, it reawakens your reality. But there is one thing the ancients understood that modern seekers often miss. You are not meant to do this alone. The illusion of separation is part of the distortion. Healing, while deeply personal, becomes exponential when shared. When more people return to this vibrational stillness, a field of coherence begins to ripple outward. And those ripples, quiet, subtle, but unstoppable, begin to unravel the deeper systems of imbalance within society. This is why this practice matters now more than ever. In a world addicted to noise, to urgency, to control, returning to the body's ancient intelligence is revolutionary. Not because it's loud, but because it's real. In the silence between your thoughts, in the space between your breaths, you are accessing something that no algorithm, no pharmaceutical, no institution can replicate. The intelligence of the cosmos encoded in your cells, awakened by your intention. And yet, most people will never touch it. They will keep searching, keep numbing, keep outsourcing their power to something outside themselves. But you stopped, you listened, you remembered. And that single act is enough to change the trajectory of a life. Right now, you are being invited into a new relationship with your body, your mind, and your purpose. A life not driven by fear, but guided by frequency. A path not of effort, but of alignment. It will not always be easy. Old programming will tug at you, convincing you to forget. But the more you practice, the more unshakable you become. Because this is not a belief, it's an experience. Once felt, it cannot be unfelt. Once remembered, it cannot be taken. And if you have made it this far, know this. You are ready. Ready not just to receive this knowledge, but to embody it, to live as a beacon of coherence in a dissonant world. This is how the ancient temples were built, not with stone, but with vibration. And now you become the temple. Your life becomes the practice. Do not let this wisdom remain an idea. Let it root into your rituals, your rest, your relationships. Let your fingers remember what your mind has forgotten. Each touch a signal, each breath a prayer, each moment a return. The true work does not end. It evolves, becoming an integral part of who you are. You were not meant to remain disconnected, scattered, or numb. You were born to remember, to return, to rise.